Okay, and I'm recording now. So that's just lesson 3, but this is lesson 4 already, so just ignore that. So today, all we're going to be doing is going over the different types of intervals. This agenda looks short, but there are many different types of interval qualities. I'm sure you guys have already maybe learned major, minor, but there's also perfect, diminished, and augmented. Those are pretty tough concepts if you haven't learned them yet, and if you have, then it'll be a really good review. And then we'll do vocab and then homework. I think for this lesson, you don't need to have paper and pencil, but you can if you want, so yeah. Okay, so let's do a review first, before we learn about the different qualities and different types. So for now, I'm gonna call on each of you guys to answer to tell the following intervals, but only by number, so no need to put like major or minor. Okay. Close attention. Well, first let's do the types of intervals since this is much easier, so we'll get it out of the way. There are 2 types of intervals, harmonic and melodic. An interval is harmonic when the 2 notes of the interval are played at the same time, like a chord, so like this one. And an interval is melodic if the notes are played at different times, like this one. Yeah, I don't think this one is too hard for you guys to understand. Just remember that melodic means it's separated and harmonic means it's together, like a harmony. Okay, so I'll call on someone for this one. Is the interval melodic or harmonic? And then what is the interval number?
Melodic, and the interval number is 2.
Very good. It's a melodic second. That's what we would call it. Okay, we have one more.
A harmonic fifth.
Awesome. Okay, that's it. I think you guys don't need further anything on that because that was pretty easy. So now we're going to go into the different interval qualities. And qualities doesn't mean like, oh, this is a good quality or a bad quality. When I say qualities, I mean like if it's major, if it's minor, and stuff like that. So that's what the word quality means. Okay, so learning these different qualities is very important for the music theory test, as it will likely be tested on every single exam from level 3 onward. It's still on my exam, and I'm level 10, so make sure you know this. So we're going to start with 2 simple qualities, major and minor. So an interval is major if the top note of the interval belongs in the major key of the bottom note. So, okay, focusing on a major interval, we're going to look at this one. The bottom note is an A, and if we think about the A major scale, we know that it has a C sharp. That means that this is a major third. This one, although it's a 6th, it's not major because in a G sharp major scale, there is no E, it would be an E sharp. Because the E is a half step lower than that major, it is a minor interval. I don't know if I wrote down, okay, yeah, I have the definition right here. So a minor interval is when the top note is a half step lower than that of a major interval. So for example, since C to E is a major third, C to E flat would be a minor third. Okay, so let's look at some more examples below. So A to, okay, so we know that A major scale, the second note of an A major scale is B. So A to B would be a major second. So, and then B flat is a half step lower than B. So A to B flat would be a minor second. Does that make sense? Thumbs up. Good, okay. And let's look at this one again. E flat, is E flat in the key of G? It's not. It's a half step lower than E, which is in the key of G. That would make this a minor 6th. So let's do some practice. Oh, well, first notation. So on the test, they're probably going to have you they're gonna make you write the intervals with interval notation. So basically major intervals, you write it with a capital M, and then minor with a lowercase m. So if you had a major sixth, you would write a capital M and then the number 6. If you had a minor sixth, it would be lowercase m and then 6. Okay, so let's practice that. So name the interval below with its quality, major or minor, and number. And since we're doing notation, I'll have you guys type it in the chat for the first one. So the right answer is a minor third. Does anybody want to explain why?
Yes, I can explain.
Go ahead.
In the A major scale is A and then B and then C sharp. But here, the note above A is C, not C sharp. So it's a minor one.
Very good explanation. Perfect. That's why it's a minor third and not a major third, because C is not in the key of A major. Awesome. Okay, and make sure to pay attention to which clef we're using. Many theory tests will use that to trick you. So now we're in bass clef. Okay, this time I'll give you guys like a few seconds to think about it, and then I'll call on someone.
Minor seventh.
Perfect. Awesome. It is a minor seventh. Do you want to explain why? How you got the answer?
Because wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because E major has a D sharp, and then that's what half step below, so it's minor.
Exactly. Yeah, E has a D sharp in it, and that is a D natural. So this would be a minor seventh. Awesome. Okay, I think we have like 1 or 2 more.
A minor 6.
Okay, you got the number correct, but think about the key of E major. Does it have a C in it?
Oh yeah. A major 6.
Very good. And then you would write that as capital M and then 6. Yeah, this time C sharp is in the key of E major. If you want to if you really need to review, you can think back to when we learned about the key signatures and then try to figure out how many sharps it has. But yeah, this is a major sixth. Okay, this is the last one, I think.
Minor 2.
Very good. It is a minor second. And it's melodic, so make sure, I mean, I know you got it correct, but just in the future, make sure not to confuse the bottom note, especially when the notes are this close. But yeah, you are correct because D is not in the key of C sharp. D sharp is in the key of C sharp, and then D is a half step below D sharp. So it's a minor second. Okay, this is the last one. So name the interval below with major, minor number. So we'll go back to answering in the chat for this one so everyone can get a chance to answer. So I think all of you guys said major second, and that's correct. It may be kind of confusing because if you're thinking about minor and major keys, you're like, oh, B is in both the minor and the major key. But because it's in the major key, it would be a major second. It would be a minor second if this was a B flat. So good job to all of you for getting it right. Okay, I think this is really important to pay attention to also. So another type of interval is called a perfect interval. So an interval is perfect when you have a major interval and that interval is a first, a fourth, a fifth, or an eighth. And they're called perfect because if you invert the interval, like you bring the bottom note up an octave, the interval stays major. And that doesn't happen with any other numbers. So that means instead of writing major fourth or major fifth, you would write perfect fourth, perfect fifth, perfect one, or perfect eight. And if you guys are curious, one interval is just two of the same note. Okay, so remember those numbers. I'll give you 10 seconds to remember these 4 numbers, and then we'll go practice. Okay, so yeah. Okay, type in the chat, is this major or perfect? And if you can also type the correct interval and the notation. Very good. Okay. And yeah, so it is
Harmonic 4?
Yes, it can be harmonic and perfect at the same time, just like it can be harmonic and major at the same time. But in most theory tests, they won't really ask you if to write harmonic. So as long as you have perfect fourth, then it's good. Okay. And
Is a perfect interval major?
Yes, but I explained that they're perfect because if you invert like this note to a C, FC is still a major chord, and that's why in music theory we call it perfect. There is no other reason why, that's just how it works. So yeah.
It's still technically a major interval, right?
Yes, it is a major interval, but because it is a fourth or a fifth or the other two, then we would call it perfect and not major.
A perfect major harmonic interval fourth.
Yes, but if you write a major fourth, you will get it wrong. Like they're gonna mark that wrong. So make sure you don't write perfect major, only write perfect. Got it? Okay, so let's go to the next one. Is this one major or perfect?
Perfect.
Very good. And I'm sure the rest of you guys all remember as well. Okay, yeah, because this is an eighth, you would write P8, and make sure to write a capital P too. So yeah, I didn't put a key signature here, but regardless of key signature, you can see it's an octave, so it's perfect. Oh, that's it. Okay, well, make sure to remember those numbers 1, 4, 5, 8, because when we do the practice later, we're going to come back to that. So the last two types of interval qualities are diminished and augmented. So this one you really need to focus on. These ones are a bit more difficult. So I think during the Saturday review session, we're going to keep on practicing with these. So an interval is diminished if it is a half step lower than a minor or a perfect interval. So if you had a fourth interval and the top note was lowered, you wouldn't call it a minor fourth. It would be called a diminished fourth. Yeah, confusing, right? And an interval is augmented if it is a half step higher than a major or perfect interval. I think one of the big takeaways from augmented versus diminished is you remember that perfect intervals can never be minor or major. If you have a 1, 4, 5, or 8 interval and it's not major, then it would be called diminished or augmented. So that's really important to remember. And then for normal intervals like major, minor, the ones that are not perfect, if it's a half step lower than a minor chord, then it would be diminished. And if it was a half step higher than a major, then it would be augmented. And sometimes on the test, they will refer to diminished and augmented intervals as tritones, because generally these kinds of intervals just sound weird, so they're called tritones. Okay, so let's look at some examples that might help you guys visualize it better. So remember the definition of diminish means that it's a half step lower than what would be a minor sixth. So, okay, in the key of F sharp, a minor sixth would be D, because in a major key, it would be D sharp, so lower it once and it's a D. And then since this is a D flat, you lower the minor chord again. so it's diminished. So if you're trying to figure out an interval step by step, it would be either major, lower it once and it's minor, lower it again and it's diminished. So you can try to remember that order if that helps you. Okay, now let's look to the right. The reason this chord is an augmented fourth is because, first of all, we have the numerical interval would be 4, and then we recognize that as one of the perfect intervals, right? But if we look at it closer, okay, let's think it in the key of C. F sharp is not in the key of C. And then the note that we have, F sharp, is a half step above F. And since that's a half step above F, it would be augmented. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, good. This is a much more difficult concept, and I'm glad you guys are getting it. I think we have a lot of practice on this for both class and homework. Okay, and then as notation, it's a bit more complicated as well. So as a reminder, major is with a capital M, minor is with a lowercase m, and perfect is with a capital P. So the way you would notate diminished and augmented intervals, diminished would be a lowercase d, or you can do a small circle. For like the circle thing, you usually don't do it with intervals, it's usually with chords, but just know if you see a small circle, that also means diminished. And then augmented is lowered with an uppercase A or a plus sign. Yeah, just remember that, okay. So yeah, these are some examples. You would label this as A4 because it's a perfect fourth, but the F sharp is a half step higher, so it's augmented. And okay, that's the same thing. And this one would be a diminished fifth. We recognize 5 as one of the perfect intervals. And since, okay, and we look at the key of F sharp, C is a half step lower than C sharp, so it would be diminished. Let's do some practice. Okay, so we're gonna do this one together. Well, this one's not that hard, I think. So I'm gonna call on someone for this one. But things to keep in mind, first identify if it's major or minor. And while you're doing that, think which number intervals would be perfect, and is my interval a perfect interval? And then if it's not a perfect interval, go even further and think, oh, could it be augmented or diminished? So Dylan, is this chord, okay, which quality is this chord? Major, minor, perfect, augmented, or diminished? This one.
Major.
Very good. And can you give the number?
2.
Very good. Okay. Next one. Don't worry about the time signature or anything like that.
Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Augmented. Oh, augmented fifth.
Very close. I can see your line of reasoning, but every time you try to tell an interval, make sure you look at the number first. I think I should have written that as a step. But step 1, always figure out which number it is first. So if you ignore like all of this jargon, you would just see C and A, and C to A is a sixth. I'm sure you know that. Okay, so now that we have the number sixth, okay, so next would be to think in the key of C. And is A flat part of C major, Alvin?
Oh, it's a -6.
Yes, very good. But good line of reasoning. It would be an augmented fifth if it was a G sharp. But since it's written as an A flat, we wouldn't call it an augmented fifth. But very good.
Okay.
Oh, wait, what happened?
Major 6. Wait, is it a 6th one? It's an 8th. Okay. Major 8th. Wait, Isn't it, wait, perfect? A perfect? Give me a second.
Okay, remember yeah, so are you deciding if it's major or perfect?
Perfect.
Very good. So octaves are always perfect. So yeah, this is a perfect eighth. You got the number correct, so very good. Yeah, so remember 1, 4, 5, 8 are the perfect ones. Okay. This one kind of relates to the last one a bit. Remember to figure out the number first and then think about the quality.
Perfect minor?
So what would we call that? We have a special name for that, and it's in one of these. Okay, let's go back to our definitions. Oh my God, there's so many things. Okay.
D.
So it's one of these two, that's what I'm telling you. Okay, so if we have a perfect interval and the top note is a half step lower, it would be called diminished. So, and if it's a half step higher, it would be augmented. So you already identified that we have a perfect interval number, but as you noticed, probably the top note isn't like a perfect octave above, and it's a half step lower. So what would we call that? It's one of these two.
Diminished?
Very good. So remember, you won't call it a minor eighth. Remember, there's no such thing as minor or major eighth. If it's a half step lower than a perfect one, then you would call it diminished. Does that make sense? Okay, very good. Okay, so this is the vocabulary of the week. I think we can start some of the homework together if that helps with further review, but I'm gonna go over this first. So we have a lot of vocab this week, but that's just because we went over a lot of different types of interval qualities. So just make sure you know what interval quality means, and then we went over melodic and harmonic. And then these are all the different types of qualities. Remember that tritone can also mean diminished and augmented. And then just make sure to remember the interval notation. Yeah, in music theory, it all depends on like how you write the notes, so just pay attention to that. Okay, so I know we're past time, so good job today. This is a harder concept in our lessons, and you guys did really well. Don't be sad if you don't understand it completely yet. I know it's a new concept, and you guys already learned really quickly, so that's awesome job to all 4 of you. So, okay, yeah. If you guys have no further questions, then that will be the end of class, and then I'll post slides and homework very soon. So, is that good with everyone? Okay, cool. Good job, guys. Yeah, and thanks everyone. We'll see you on Saturday. Bye.